Hey everybody, us guy from Drinking Gourd. Thanks for tuning in. Gonna be going over a video here. It's a video about a Secret Service agent, a former Secret Service agent that was just going over the ins and outs of being a Secret Service agent. And this is all in the wake of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And it was a very interesting video that I saw. And I'd like for you to check this out as well. So let's get into it.
You spent much of your time around great leaders. If I think about, you were working for about almost 12 years around people like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. Did you learn anything about leadership from those individuals, from observing them and seeing how they conducted themselves and how they communicated? In the UK, we see someone like Barack Obama as a really incredible leader for many reasons, but I think one of the real standout reasons is his ability to communicate in a certain way, which galvanizes people. And we haven't really seen, I mean, one could actually argue that Trump has his own masterful communication skills. It's very different, but it seems to work. You know, did you learn anything from being around these presidents about leadership and
So
communication?
you learn something from all of them. To be president of the United States, whoever you are, I mean, that's a feat in of itself. So they all have something. So it's interesting. The one thing I learned is resilience. You'll be next to the president, and this was every president, a former, all of them I stood next to, and you're standing next to them, and they're about to go on stage or in a big meeting, or they're talking to someone, and you've got the news on, and there's some political pundit on the news or channel talking about how stupid they are. He's a dummy, he's this, he's that. They're shredding them. And he looks at it, yeah, gets his stuff together, gets his speech together, gets on stage and delivers. When the majority of the public would sit there, oh my God, I'm disrespected, I'm this, how can they say that? Nothing. That was amazing to me. So not only did the US Secret Service make me resilient, but to see somebody just take such heat or hear such horrible things said about them on a consistent basis on such public platforms, and you have the ability to wake up, walk outside the White House, your head up, get in your limo, go on stage, go do this press conference, and you're like, it's just gonna happen. There's no there's no school for that. And so because I was around these personalities, I'm like, yeah, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Who was the most impressive?
Um, wow. I mean, that just kind of is opposite of what we are experiencing in society, isn't it? I mean, people don't have that kind of character and fortitude that walk around the streets with us. They don't. They're so fragile. They're so a willow in the wind. It's it's understandable that in order to succeed and get to that level, you have to have resilience. But are we building that into our children nowadays? Are our children resilient, or are they just fall apart? Okay, do they can they withstand what the world has to offer? I don't think they can. I don't think they have been. I think they need to learn. I think we need to teach them this. Teach them how to be resilient. That your whole world doesn't fall apart because someone disagrees with you and doesn't share the same opinion as you. And that causes people to just totally lose their minds, crumble. If you don't get a lot of likes, your life ends. It's just not the right way to live.
I have to tell you, they all were. There was no one that wasn't. Like they all had their gift. And even Trump, you brought up Trump before. I think what people like about him, he's just direct. He's very direct and he just lands it. He says what he says and he doesn't care. There's a there's something, and I'm Switzerland because in the US Secret Service, we actually weren't even allowed to talk about if we voted for someone. We were very apolitical. And I've always stayed that way. But from an objective standpoint, people just like the fact that he just says it and he doesn't care. And sometimes I think people envy that.
Did you see how they made
Oh, that is something that I love about Trump and drives me crazy about the news media and how they portray Trump and how for ever since he came down that golden escalator and he said that he was going to be running for president, they've been hammering and hammering that he's a liar. He's such a liar. He lies, he lies, he lies, he lies. And there's not a lying bone in that man's body. Why? Because everything comes out of his mouth and he doesn't care how you feel about it. It's the truth. I'm just speaking the truth. That's how he is. We need to close our borders. Why? Because it's going to cause chaos, mayhem, and hurt us as a country. It's the all the illegal aliens that came over here that were emptied out of jails in all those countries. Their crime rate has gone down 70% around the world. How is that possible? And ours is rising. How is that possible? Maybe because we let a bunch of criminals in. Not everybody's a criminal, of course. But when you can reduce crime around the world 70%, we got a lot of them. And it's all over the news, and people are dying. And, oh, we have insane people saying, oh, let them all in. Wait until they're kicking down your door.
their decisions? Did you ever observe them making tough decisions?
Yes, all the time. You would be behind closed door meetings, you would hear their ability.
Give me an example of this. I'm interested, when the stakes are that high, because a lot of us on a day-to-day basis are making fairly inconsequential decisions, especially in the context of running the most powerful nation in the world. So I'm interested when the stakes are that high, when you've got to get Osama bin Laden in a compound in Pakistan, or there's a terrorist attack, how these individuals make decisions.
They're not driven by emotion. They're very rational based decisions. I weigh the pros, I weigh the cons, I look at the facts. So you very rarely, if ever, and I could probably say, I've never heard a US president yell. Ever. I've never heard a US president lose himself. When you hear them debate or talk about things, it's a debate. I can look at you, you can look at me, I'll be like, Stephen, I don't think that this is right. And then you'd say, Evie, well, why isn't this right? If we do it this way, this way, this way, this is going to happen. Yeah, but Stephen, if you do it like that, then what if this happens and these guys die? Well, I don't see it like that. Well, sure, I see it this way. It's like, we're going to have to figure it out. But you're also with people who have the ability to sit and withstand. Their feelings are not so fragile, their ego not so soft that you can actually have this debate. And that's important for you to have in your circle. Can you have these debates with people? I would call them competing. There's two great researchers in the UK, Dr. Lawrence and Emily Allison, and they archetype people as animals. And one of the things they talk about is someone who's in control and setting the agenda is someone who's lying. I'm a lion. And so sometimes we have to bring a little bit more lion in with us. Or somebody who's competing is somebody who's capable of kind of debating with you, but it doesn't have to be ugly. I don't have to raise my voice or get in your face to break something down. I can sit there and be rational. The problem the majority of people have is they're so invested and emotional, they bring their feelings into it. Even something you just brought up, Trump, and you had like a little bit of a look like Trump, because everyone's so emotional when they hear that name. Pull back and be objective. It's like, let me look at this from a factual standpoint. I'm going to lay this out. I'm going to lay this out and let this lay out. When you can make decisions based on facts and rationality, the emotions go out the window. You don't want to be an emotional decision maker. It never goes well because you're not thinking clearly. You're like just going with the wave. And it's those moments when you say something you shouldn't say, then afterward you regret it. Why did that person get me to say that? I went in with this intention. I got pulled in this direction. This person got me to say that. No, it's always on you because you're the governor of you.
The first time you got it,
Wow. She dropped a bunch of knowledge right there. In two things that I'm trying to remember I wanted to speak about. The way to debate and to hash things out. People don't understand that our government, our entire nation, our entire lives were built on debate. They were built on people coming together, our founding fathers, and fighting it out, but understanding that even if they hated each other, they had differences of opinions, and they knew they had a job to do, and they had to hash it out. They had to debate it out. They had to come to an agreement in order for it to work. That's the only way it worked. But like she said, when you bring your feelings into it, you're not thinking clearly. And hey, you guys can get on me about this, and and you can call me misogynistic, which is, look up the term misogynist, okay, before you say that. But having a female president of the United States is kind of dangerous because naturally females, women, okay, and it's funny how the left doesn't want to define a woman unless it's a woman president, or and so a woman who is driven mainly by emotions in a spot where you need to be rational. You can't be rational if you're emotional. It just doesn't work. Do you want somebody, or do you think it's safe for us to have somebody who is purely driven by emotions? It's a scary thought. It's a very scary thought. There's a reason why rational thinking, logical men have been in charge for all this time. It doesn't work with a woman in charge. That's not being sexist. That's just pointing out a stone cold fact that in certain situations, a woman cannot hold up like a man. All we have to do is look at what happened to President Trump and his security detail that day. The women couldn't pick him up to carry him to the vehicle. They weren't big enough to cover his body. Why were they there? They should never have been there. You just have to admit, women, there are some places you can't and should not be. Leave it up to the men. And I know everybody wants to be like, oh, men and women are equal. Women can do the same thing, the same job that a man can do. Really? How come a jar can kick your ass? You can't open a jar. What am I going to do when it comes down to really big, hard decisions? Trust it to you? No. And I'm not being sexist. There are decisions that my wife makes that I can't make because you know what? It has to do with empathy and feelings, and that's her wheelhouse in dealing with children and things of that nature. That's her wheelhouse. But in the house, I have to be the leader. There has to be a leader. Oh, there was this video I watched about they had two separate islands, island of men and island of women, and the women almost died twice. They had to be rescued several times because they couldn't manage on their own. You have to watch it. Maybe I can find the link and put it in the description so you can watch that video. Let's get back to this one though.
Under a president, were there any things that surprised you? Any things that before then you had a sort of ideas of what they were like and how they behaved that you realized suddenly were like popular misconceptions that most people believe about presidents and so on?
I don't know if this is a misconception, but my first time, they call it standing post. It was for President George W. Bush. He's in office. I'm standing post for him somewhere.
What does that mean?
Oh, standing post is when you're new, you don't get into like the close circle of the president. It's, Evie, here's the door. And the president's going to walk through this door in like 8 hours from now. We're going to sweep it, check for bombs and everything. And your job is to stand, watch this door for 8 hours. Nobody comes through, right? That's it. That's called post standing. You secure the perimeter. It's mundane, right? But you do it. It's part of the job, especially when you start. So I have one of my first post standing things. I'm standing by the door and the head agent, senior agent's coming around checking on us. Hey, you okay? You okay? You need anything? It's briefing us. And the one agent comes and he's like, you're new, right? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm sort of new. I mean, I had started under Clinton, but Bush was my real, I don't know but my real hardcore assignment. And he's like, where's your phone? I said, it's here, sir. He's like, is that thing off or on silent? I said, yeah. He's like, don't let Bush hear your phone go off. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, if he hears your phone go off, you're going home. He's like, he doesn't want to hear phones. We want like a respectable environment, a quiet environment. That thing goes off, you're gone. He sends people home. And I was like, what? Why would he get so upset with the phone? I didn't quite understand it. Now I understand it. Because if everybody's doing this and distracted, nobody's focused, there's things going on, it's the energy, the vibration. He was trying to be a leader and set boundaries for the environment he wanted. Everybody present, everybody's focused, nobody's on their phones, no shenanigans. That really stuck with me. And you better make sure I took that thing out, put it all the way down. I was like, the president of the United States is not sending me home. And they're like, he does it. So though that's something like I always remembered, and it's a boundary, and it's just something he imposed throughout the environment. I remember thinking, wow, the president of the United States actually sits in, I don't want to say control something so minute, but something so small can impact or create this ripple effect of the environment that he is trying to cultivate.
Why?
That is another powerful segment she just dropped on us, that you have to be thinking about that. You have to. My mom always used to say, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. You are a product of the people that you surround yourself with. You will become the people that you surround yourself with. So if you're, amongst people who are poor, you're not going to get any richer. Get some more affluent friends. Learn what they do, and that will help you. It's because you see the principle is you cannot learn how to be rich from your neighbor. Why? Because your neighbor is making about the same amount of money as you. They're living next door to you. If they knew how to be rich, they wouldn't be living next door to you now, would they? So taking stock information and stock options and stock advice from them, it doesn't make sense, does it? Because if it was successful for them, they wouldn't be there. So it's a matter. It's a matter of understanding. I'm trying my best way to put it. What she was saying. I'll get back to it. It'll come back to me later.
Why did you get that job? Because when I was reading through the numbers around how many people sort of apply to do the initial training, and then how many people ultimately get to be that close to these major issues, it seems like very few people get there. Could you quantify that for me? How many people dropped out during training? How many people passed? And how rare is it to get to the position that you got to?
So they spend like tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even 100K by the time you get hired on you. So to understand how they select you, once you get selected, like you've gone through a rigorous process. So for example, I started in the NYPD. When I went in, it was 1,500 of us, and people would just quit left and right, and they wanted you to quit.
I think she's
When I
talking
went to
about
the
women.
U.S. Secret
There were
Service
1,500
Academy,
women.
At that point, it was like 54 of us, but you were hand selected. So one, you apply, and I think they only take 1% of all applications that they get, which is like it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to get into the service. So out of all the applications, they only select 1% to even look at. Then they decide, okay, I'm going to put this person through the process. Then they make you fill in all this paperwork, Stephen. I can't even tell you the amount of weeks it took me. Write essays, how you're going to handle problems. Hey, they'll give you problem scenarios, and they'll say, you have this problem. How would you handle this? And they'll give you like, you've been here. What would you do here? And they have you write out essays and break down what you would do. Then your paperwork. So they take your paperwork, they go through all that stuff, then they do background checks on you, criminal checks, background checks. They talk to all your neighbors. When I was in the US, when I was applying, I had studied overseas when I was in college. And one of the semesters I did abroad was in Italy. They sent an agent to Italy to speak to my college professor in Rome to ask him what kind of student I was. So they do such an invasive look into you. You do a polygraph, you take a written test. It's called the TEA exam. I think they've changed it, but it was like in the US, it's like they call it the SATs. It was the SATs on steroids. That thing was so hard. I thought for sure I failed it. I was like, there's no way I passed this thing. I squeaked through that. And there's all these things. So by the time you get offered, they give you, it's a conditional offer of employment. Evie, you've passed everything. So we're going to let you try to go to training. And then if you pass that, then you go on probation for like, I think it's 3 years, and then you're good. Then you're truly in. But by the time you get to this process where you're actually going to training, because they've dumped so much money in you, like you're at that point where you're typically going to get through it because they don't want you to quit because they've dropped a lot of money on you. So at that point, they've really invested in you because they believe that you can meet the standards and be part of a culture that they want. So it is hard, but they do kick people out. It happens all the time.
That is something else. That is a very powerful testimony to what is necessary to protect a president of the United States and to protect foreign dignitaries, to protect our leaders. What these guys have to go through and who they have to be. And this just strikes in the face of DEI hiring and saying that, hey, we want we need 30% more women in the Secret Service, regardless of whether they can do the job. I'm sorry, as a president, if I was Donald Trump, and we saw it when he at the RNC, his security detail were nothing but big, strong men, as opposed to the day in Butler. And I don't blame him at all. I don't blame him at all. Because if the person can't even physically cover you when they're supposed to be covering you, they don't need to be there. They don't. I'm a short person. I don't take it personally. Okay? But they don't need to be there. And Cheeto, oh, she needs to be in jail. She don't need to be fired. She needs to be in jail. She needs to be charged with treason. And we all know what the penalty for treason is. Okay? There is no excuse. I'm gonna go over a video on how close that really was. How close it really was that this whole place could have been burned down. So, thanks for watching. I hope you got as much out of that video as I did because, wow, she dropped a lot. She dropped a lot of knowledge, and that's from the inside, a side that we don't rarely get to see. And I appreciate that. I'll leave a link in the description to the interview as well. You just saw the whole interview. And just thanks for stopping by. Give me your comments, like and subscribe, of course. But let me know what you found out about what's happened and any rabbit holes we need to go down because there's a lot of them. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.